Many times, the people that unfortunately were taught to hate the Jews from the African American society, community, culture, are taught that the Jews had better opportunities while we were in the projects. They came for money. We didn't have anything. They run the world. I'll spare you the rest. I'm sure you've heard enough on your own. Now, this is hogwash. Why? First and foremost, no one in the world, even if you combine all of civilizations combined, can compete with the amount of suffering and anguish of the Jewish people throughout all of history, not just the last 70 years, and needless to say, not over the last couple of 100 years. Throughout all of history, there is no comparison. Anyone that looks throughout history will know that to be fact. Whether it was the slavery in Egypt, or the destruction and annihilation of millions of people during the destruction of the First Temple, or the Second Temple, or the Spanish Inquisitions, or the pogroms throughout all of history, whether it be in England, or in Spain, or in Morocco, or all over Europe, constant attacks against the Jewish people. Not just the Holocaust. But even if you exclude all of that, the average Jew throughout all of history got used to poverty as a standard. Throughout all of history, the Jewish people as a whole have dealt more with poverty than with wealth. Certainly there were times where we were more successful than others, like any other culture, religion, people, whatever you want to call it, because the Jews are everything. But needless to say, there were times like the time of Shlomo HaMelech where gold became like dust because there was so much of it. But there were certainly times where literally people had to eat their own kids in order to survive, like at the destruction of the First and the Second Temple. The starvation was beyond anything comprehensible to anybody living today. Poverty was standard. Now people think, yeah, but that's a long time ago. Now everybody's rich. Okay. How about I tell you about my life? You know, my life, you can't debate. Why? I lived it. When I was 10 years old, we came to the United States. And already when I was 10 years old, guess what? I was in 5th grade, gonna go to school. In my school, public school, there was black kids, there was white kids. And in this school, there was 2 people that had a job. 10 years old. Me and another Jewish kid. Why? Because both of us were poor. Both of us needed to help the family. Yeah, but what about the other black kids? They also didn't have... No, actually, they had much more than us. They had new sneakers every 6 months. They had new clothes every other day. Apparently, their parents were doing better than mine. And guess what? Situation didn't change. We continued working. When I was in high school, I had 3 jobs. 2 newspaper routes, also worked in a clothing store and a shoe store. And I also played high school football and went to school and had advanced placement classes for college and did really well in school. All at the same time. My teammates, they were black. They played football. You know what else? Nothing. How come I worked so much? Well, that's because if I didn't work, I couldn't pay for football because my parents didn't have any money to pay for football. And if I didn't work, I also couldn't buy anything else because my parents didn't have any money to give me for anything else. Meaning I have to be self-sufficient. And guess what? I wasn't the only one. There were other kids in my class that were similar. And they were Jews. And guess what? Even the kids that didn't need, sometimes will take some extra jobs And typically those guys were Jews. Sometimes they were Spanish guys, but most of the time, Jews. You know why? Because the way we grew up, even though we didn't grow up religious, we grew up where we realized we had to be self-sufficient. And we didn't dream for a second that we're going to become the next big athlete or the next big anything. We knew we had to be providing to the best of our abilities. Now, the guys on my team, some of them were really good. Trevor Francis, Zarek Norris, the LT, we called him Lawrence Taylor, he even looked like him. All these guys were really good athletes. Some other guys, I forget their names. These guys were good. Some of them played in college. Some of them thought they're going to become the next big NFL player. You know what they ended up becoming? Nothing. Some of them even less than nothing. Why? Because that was their dream. And their entire dream was to be this football player. Which means that they were brought up with a thought process that this is it. This is where you need to be. You need to think like you're going to be an NFL player. You need to think you're going to be in the NBA. You need to think like you're going to be in whatever, some other sport. And when it didn't happen, like it doesn't happen for the vast majority of athletes, they have nothing to fall back on because many times they're not brought up thinking that the education is priority over the athletics. And sometimes the teachers give them an A, even though he should get an F because he's a good athlete. They give him a pass, even though he failed and he never even showed up to class because he just scored a touchdown. Or he scored a bunch of points in a basketball team. Or he scored a goal in a hockey team or in a soccer team or some other team. And many times they abandon their studies. And many times they end up leaving school completely clueless when it comes to learning how to think for themselves. Because that's the purpose of school. The purpose of school is not to teach you history. It's not even to teach you math. It's to teach you how to think. But since everybody has been thinking for them their whole life, telling them that you're going to become the next big sports athlete, what ends up happening when they don't succeed, they have nothing to fall back on. They either have to stay in college for extra amount of time, or they end up getting some blue-collar job that, quite frankly, they should have done better than that. Had they spent the same amount of energy on their studies as they did on their body and their athletics. This is not a product of Jew versus black. This is a part of society at large, where Shlomo HaMelech already told us about this nearly 3,000 years ago. This danger, this poison, is a product of society already for several thousand years. It's as old as time. Where Shlomo HaMelech says in chapter 27, verse 21, מצרף לכסף וכור לזהב, ואיש לפי מעללו. A refining pot is for silver and a crucible for gold, and a man according to his praises. Here, King Solomon tells us a very important message. A person can think, oh, silver, that's something to aspire to have. Gold is even better. And all they talk about is the gold and the silver and the title and the winning and the house and the car and the watch and the bling bling and the bling there and the bling there and the hot girl and the cold one and the this and the that and all the materialism and the constant, that's their life and that's what they think and that's what they want and that's what they aspire to be. Ve'ish lefi malalo. You aspire something, that's what tells me who you are. Based on who you aspire to be, based on what you aspire to be, based on what you admire, what you think is important enough to admire, that's how I know who you are. And if society teaches kids, black, white, green, Jewish, Gentile, doesn't make a difference. If you are taught and you allow this to happen to you, happen to your kids, that you should admire success based on money, success based on looks, success based on some type of possessions, that's what tells me who you are. And what that is you're nothing. Why? Because those things end up being nothing. If you determine what your goals are in life based on assets, based on a balance sheet, that's what you think makes you who you are, you're a nothing. You're a zero. And you're breeding zeros. It has nothing to do with the Jews. It has to do with you going against the law of God. Because God told you, don't do that. God told you, don't admire those things. Those things, I'll give you if I want, I don't give you if I don't want. Don't make those things your life. Why? Because when you make material possessions, honor, fame, fortune, the aspiration of your life, you're destined for doom. Because what ends up happening is that you teach your little cute kids that have all the potential in the world to succeed, Jew or Gentile, black, white, green, or burgundy. Whatever you are, that little kid, that little possession, that little treasure has all of the potential in the world to be whatever they want. They could be a doctor, they could be a diagnostician, a scientist, a scholar, whatever you want them to be. They could be a great rabbi, a sage, someone holy. They could be anything you want them to be, but they could also be a criminal. They could also be a gangster. They could also be a blood or a crip. They could also be some Arab terrorist in ISIS. They could also be some delusional person that thinks there's a real country named Palestine. They could be a lot of different things. You see, what you teach them, that's what they're going to be. But I don't mean the material, the content that you teach them in some public school that teaches the boys they should be girls and the boys should be girls. No. I mean what you teach them, what should they admire? What should they admire? How would they know what to admire? I'll tell you how they know what to admire. You see, since we learn about HaKadosh Baruch Hu, since we connected our life and committed ourselves to HaKadosh Baruch Hu and spent every waking moment we possibly can just thinking about Hashem, learning His Torah, learning His books, learning His everything, one of the things that I realized there was one thing that I had to fix with my kids, with the rest of my life, is that yes, you need to work hard. Yes, you need to be self-sufficient. But at the same token, you need to make sure that you have the right ideology, that you teach your kids to admire the right people and the right things. And even though I've always stood for righteousness, I've always stood for honesty, I've always stood for certain things that Baruch Hashem are good, but still, I needed somebody to admire, somebody to look up to, because who am I going to tell my kids to admire? Who am I going to tell the kids to admire? So Bill Gates, Warren Buffett, some guy that's here today, gone tomorrow. Maybe he's a rapist. Maybe he's a pedophile. Maybe he's a terrorist. Maybe he's trying to kill people with some virus or a vaccine. How can I tell him? What? Because he has possessions? I need somebody to admire. HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave us an endless supply of people to admire. And that's the Jewish sages. Those are the people that taught us righteousness. Those are the people that tell us the word of God. And you know what? Every single night, without fail, Baruch Hashem, we try our best to tell our kids another story about somebody to admire. And you see, Rabotai, I'll show you some examples. These are some of the things that my kids are learning. You see, my kids are learning differently than I did. Why? Because I want them to learn better. So one night, we'll read them this book about Rav Steinemann, where it has many, many different stories about Rav Steinemann's life, how holy he was, how committed he was, how many people he helped, how extraordinarily committed he was to learning, how extraordinarily committed he was to helping society, to helping the Jewish people, to helping anyone that needed a hand that he could help, how honest he was. When he didn't necessarily have to give, he still gave. When someone thought something bad about him, he accepted it. All of the attributes that we talked about today, he had in his hand. This is one person my kids will learn about. But if that's not enough, you need more. So you have another one. You have the Chazon Ish, the very same Chazon Ish that we're learning his book right now. What about his life? A few stories about his life. So they learn about him. And if after we finish that, we read about the Chafetz Chaim, the holy Chafetz Chaim, that had Ruach HaKodesh, that he saw that the Holocaust was happening and told his students the Holocaust would happen 9 years before it actually happened. The holy Chafetz Chaim, and how committed he was. At the second that he saw that his little shop, his little store, his little deli was making too much money where the other stores weren't making enough, he closed the store. He closed the store. Why? Because the other stores weren't making enough money, so he closed the store because people are coming to him too much to buy from him because he's a tzaddik. So he closed the store and he only opened it once a week. But when he saw that people are still coming to him, even that once a week and not enough to the other people, he closed the store completely. I'll survive another way. I'll sell my books. Why? Because he didn't want to hurt his neighbor. What do you mean? But you need to make a living. Yes, exactly. I need to make a living. God will worry about that. God will worry about that. You have your kids learn about somebody like this, you're going to learn, you're going to have somebody to admire. And if that's not enough, the Rebbe Mitzantz, Rabbi Kutia Halberstam, one of the greatest tzaddikim that ever lived with us, among us over the last 100 years, despite watching his wife and 11 kids get murdered in the Holocaust. He still continued, build, and build. Build a new family, build new yeshivot, build the hospital that I was born in, Laniado, in Netanya, build an empire of Torah and Kedusha without ever questioning God for a second. Without ever questioning God, watching his wife and 11 kids get murdered in cold blood by the evil Nazis. Still he continued being committed to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. You learn from somebody like this, somebody that didn't want to go to sleep because he wanted to learn Torah, somebody that didn't want to stop even though the government went against him, even though people went against him, somebody that went against every odd known to man, still with the word of Hashem. You have your kids admire somebody like this, you have something to admire. And if that's not enough, you learn about one of the people that literally lived among us just a few years ago, Rabbi Yashiv, Kodesh Kodeshim, someone that literally studied Torah endlessly, knew the entire Torah in his mind in such a fashion that's unlike human. Somebody came to the yeshiva, to the place that he went to, and was looking, where is this Eliashiv? You know somebody Eliashiv? And he said, yes, he's over there. He goes, oh wow. He goes, how do you know him? He goes, well, 80 years ago, I was here. And he was sitting exactly there. And he's still there. Meaning, that man, that Jew, went to the shul, went to the yeshiva, same as Rabbi Yashiv. He went a different way, Rabbi Yashiv went a different way. He did his success, his money, whatever he did, Rabbi Yashiv stayed with the Torah. Guess what? The admirable one, the one we read a book about, is this one. Is Rabbi Yashiv. Committed to the Torah. How many people he helped, how many lives he saved. The Baba Sali, who doesn't know the Baba Sali? The Baba Sali is even known by Gentiles. Everyone knows the miracles by the Baba Sali, the holiness of the Baba Sali, but the intricate details of what he had to endure during his life, what commitments he made, what kind of sacrifices he made. This is what we teach our kids about the Baba Sali. And this is, again, just a small token. You have Rav Moshe Feinstein, one of the greatest rabbis that ever lived in America, one of the greatest pioneers of America's Judaism. The holiness and the humility of Rav Moshe Feinstein is literally unlike any other. You teach your kid about Rav Moshe Feinstein, you're teaching him how to be humble. Why to be humble? You're teaching him literally humility from the source. So if this is your hero, this is somebody to aspire to be. The Lubavitcher Rebbe. Everybody knows the Lubavitcher Rebbe. A lot of extraordinary things that he did, an empire that he built. A lot of amazing things that he did. You learn about different things that happened in his life. The successes, the failures, different intricate details that your kid can aspire to be somebody righteous. Somebody that is worth aspiring to be. And of course, Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach. How much he suffered in his life, but still never will you ever find a picture of him without a smile. The amount of suffering that he had in his life is literally unbelievable. But yet every picture you will ever find of him has a huge smile on. This, Rabotai, is true happiness, happiness of Torah. My house, Baruch Hashem, is full of these books. But then you have the historical lessons, real stories, not fairy tales, real stories that are full of these little books that teach my kids different things. The little judge, talking about a little kid from a few hundred years ago, that literally was like a little dayan in his community, and ended up helping the real dayanim solve a case when somebody was actually a thief, and the kid ended up proving that he really is a thief. This little kid, it became part of our holy Torah, part of our teachings. And you teach your kids that it doesn't matter how old you are. It doesn't matter whether you're big or you're small. If you have the truth, you have the truth. Your kids learn stuff like this, your kids are going to look good in the eyes of God. The salvation in Yemen, one of the most famous stories from the community in Yemen, where the evil Gentiles in that were helping the king at the time, which was the king wasn't necessarily much against the Jews, but he wasn't necessarily for them. But the few people that worked for him hated the Jews and tried to do whatever they could to hurt the Jews. And one time they conspired to hurt the Jews by having the king annihilate all of them. How? They killed the prince themselves right in front of the Jews, but they did it in a way where the king didn't see it. So the king believed them when he said that the Jews killed the prince. So this famous story, true story, literally ended up with one of the Mekubalim, one of the holy sages of the Jewish people, came to the place because the king said he's going to kill all of the Jews. He's going to kill everybody, not one, not two. They just, according to these servants, they just killed his son, the prince. One of the Jewish sages came there and literally resurrected the kid, his prince, brought him back to life, had the kid say, "Who killed you?" He pointed at the people, said it. After he proved everything, he went back to being dead. This was witnessed by thousands of people. A true story, showing your little kid little things that are big. Why? This is something to aspire. This is, if you're part of a nation that's full of miracles, where God brings you salvation, not just at Mount Sinai, not just at Kriyat Yam Suf, the splitting of the sea, not just at the specific events that happened a few thousand years ago, but even things that happened a couple of hundred years ago. Things that happened throughout our history. We see that God is with us at all times. These are stories your kids could aspire to have. The villager of Sasov, one of the greatest stories. A person could learn endless amount of lessons of the miracles that Hashem made for the village of Sasov. The Nakdimon ben Gurion, this is a story that's from the Gemara. This is a person that committed everything he had for the sake of allowing people to do their pilgrimage to come to Jerusalem, which included putting all of his money in a line. He was very, very wealthy, putting all of his money in a line to get the wells from some Arab or some Roman that had the well. Some people say it was Arab, or some people say it was a Roman. Needless to say, it doesn't make a difference. Long story short, it was an open miracle where Hashem reversed the sun and made it rain in order to fulfill this open miracle. This is something that was a miracle in front of millions of people in open daylight a couple of thousand years ago. And this is, again, a kid's version story, but still all the facts are there. These are the things, the lion tamer. This is one of the stories of one of the tzaddikim from just 300-400 years ago, where he came to collect charity for the poor people of Jerusalem. He went to Turkey, and as soon as they put the ship at the bay, they saw that the lions were freed and were terrorizing the town. The ship reversed, but this tzaddik told them, no, I want to go back to the land. He's like, what do you mean? There's lions there. They're killing people. Even the soldiers are scared of them. He said, I paid you to bring me to Turkey. Bring me to Turkey. So they brought him to land. And everyone obviously is waiting to see this guy get eaten up by the few lions that were free, only to see him grab the lions one after another by their ear and carry them like dogs back to the king and putting him in the cage. Literally, in open daylight. In open daylight, countless people saw this type of stuff. These are the stories my kids see. These are the stories you want your kids to see. The brave butcher, the one that committed himself to the Torah, to celebrating Pesach, despite the fact that he knew that different bandits were planning to attack the community and kill all of the Jewish people because they knew they were celebrating Pesach. Everyone was hiding, getting ready to fight back against these bandits, except this butcher. The butcher stayed celebrating Pesach. Why? He said, listen, I read in the Torah that Hashem saves us specifically on Pesach. So I'm going to commit to that. That's what I'm doing. Yeah, but shouldn't you be hiding? Shouldn't you be this? No. God said it. I'm following it. Following things to the word. Following things like a fanatic. But following things to the point where the entire town was saved because of him. The entire town was saved because of him. That commitment. Your kids hear a story like this that gives them strength to overcome things, overcome obstacles, overcome naysayers, overcome all types of things that a person is going to deal with during their life. They have somebody to look up to. They have somebody that they can compare this story to that story. Some difficulty they compare it to. Saved by the Wedding. This is a guy that was very generous and helped a couple get married, and that tzedakah that he gave ended up saving his life, because when he went home to celebrate Chanukah, some bandits that followed him went into the house and they wanted to kill him. They tied him up, but the couple that got married forgot to invite him, and they said, since we didn't invite him, we're going to go to his house and invite him personally since he paid for the whole thing. They went to invite him, and they saw that the bandits that were about to kill him, they tied him up, they piled on all of them, arrested all of them, and saved his life. Point is, the tzedakah, the charity that he gave, ended up saving his life. As it says in the Torah, tzedakah tatzil mimavet. Tzedakah will save your life. The dancing bear, this is one of the evil Gentiles that tortured the Jewish people by causing them to dress up as animals and dancing for them, and then throw them in a dungeon. And if they didn't dance good, he would simply kill them or torture them. Long story short, one of the people that was arrested ended up being saved by Eliyahu Navi, who taught him how to dance. While wearing this outfit, this bear outfit, he ended up exposing the evil and the bad and the evil people. Long story short, this is a story where you can show your kids, yes, we were underdogs, but God came to save us. God came to save us. Even in personal stories. The poisoned bread, a very famous story where the kids can learn that you can't trust anybody but the Jewish sages. Why? The Jewish sages said that we cannot eat the certain things from the goyim. In previous generations, we couldn't help it, but sometimes we'd have to buy bread from the goyim. We'd have to buy bread from the Gentiles. Open bread, baked bread. One time, when one of the rabbi helped a non-Jewish kid that was working for his father selling bread, because this kid dropped all of the money that he sold the bread, and he was crying. He was scared to go to the house because he knew that his father and his stepmother were going to beat him up. So the rabbi saw this Gentile kid, and he said, "Why are you crying?" He told him why he's crying, so he gave him the money. Time passed, maybe about 10-15 years passed. A soldier shows up at the rabbi's house, and he tells him, "Listen, you don't remember who I was, but I'm the kid that you helped 15-20 years ago. I want to tell you something. My father is conspiring to poison your entire community with poison in the bread, because you guys buy bread from us once a year during after Pesach, your holiday Pesach. Don't buy the bread because they're putting poison in it." He conspired with all of the bakers in town to put poison in the bread. The rabbi didn't know how to tell this to the community without everybody losing their mind. He didn't tell everybody. He simply told them that they made a mistake in the dates, so that the holiday is one extra day. That forced everybody not to buy bread for one extra day, but that means the bread would go bad. So then they sent this report to the police. The police went to the bakeries. They had a dog eat the bread. The dog died. Obviously, they saw that this story is true. They arrested all of the bakers. Long story short, teaches us, when you're good, not just to your fellow Jews, but also the Gentiles, good things come out of it. Good things come out of it. Our job is to be a light to the nations. Light to the nations doesn't mean that we walk around with a light bulb on our head. Light to the nations means we follow the Torah, follow the rules of the Torah, and that creates light everywhere. Now, if you teach your kids about things like this, you teach your kids about how to honor their parents, how the story of the Rabbi Yaron and Antoninus, of how they saved each other's lives throughout their time, and different things. I have hundreds of these, Baruch Hashem. These things are what my kids are growing up on. You teach your kids with these types of heroes, these types of holy people, guess what? You are giving your kids a real education. You're giving your kids real heroes. You're giving your kids somebody to truly admire. Because if you give your kids the MJ, the LJ, the Michael Jacksons, the Michael Jordans, the LeBron Jameses, the Tiger Woodses of the world, those people they're going to admire, guess what? You're teaching your kids to admire something that is phantom, that's not real. Number one, because those people are not what they really are. Like on TV, they're not really like that in real life. Number two, the chances of your kid becoming like one of those super athletes, super celebrities, super stars of whatever kind, movie stars, are slim to none. Slim to none. Why? Because billions of other people are trying the same exact thing. Why don't you give your kids something that is more, has more legs, has more foundation, has something that has more possibilities of succeeding, and quite frankly, something that's more productive in society. When you have your kids aspire to be some type of celebrity, whether you're a Jew or Gentile, you're simply setting up your kid to fail. Because the chances of your kid becoming that type of celebrity or that type of athlete, that type of movie star, that type of success are literally slim to none. And even if they succeed, it also comes with all of the battles that those people fail at on a regular basis. How many celebrities and athletes are people that are worth admiring in their personal lives? How many divorces do they go through? How many addictions do they have to overcome? How many problems do they have to deal with? Things that are unknown to most people until it's too late. The pedophilia and the sex addictions and the rapes and the multiple moms and the multiple dads and the multiple this and the multiple that, meaning the whole picture is one big fake illusion, one phantom. You're teaching your kid to go and admire something that's not even a it. It's literally a destruction that's being illustrated as a success. So that is, if you wanted to say the biggest difference between the way the Jewish people raise their kids when they're religious, the religious Jewish people, not every Jewish person is raising their kids this way. If they're secular Zionist, they're raising their kids no different than you raise your kids. They're raising their kids with the admiration to become some type of politician or some type of celebrity of some kind, some movie star, some a pornography producer, some type of drug dealer, or some type of loser in society. That's what they're teaching their kids to be, because that's what the schools today teach. They teach you to be a pornography star, a pornography producer, a drug dealer, a drug user, or some type of degenerate, or maybe a celebrity, or perhaps all of them above. But if you are part of the Jewish people that are connected to God, connected to the Torah, you're teaching them about these heroes. These are people that you could truly admire. These are people that they have something to admire. They have something to look up to. They've actually done something worthwhile, something that everyone can aspire to do, something that everyone can actually also do to a certain extent. When you teach your kids that this is what you should aspire to be, then you're teaching them something. Why? Because not only can they do it, but they should do it. They should do it. And this, Rabotai, is the biggest difference between the two communities. And it's not really only two communities, it's the difference between the Orthodox Jewish people that are committed to Torah and the rest of the world. That's the difference. While the Romans and the Greeks trained their kids to be warriors, we trained our kids to be tzaddikim. While the Spaniards trained their kids to be warriors, we trained our kids to be tzaddikim. While the Nazis trained their kids to be warriors, we trained our kids to be tzaddikim. While the Americans trained their kids to be celebrities, we train our kids to be tzaddikim. While the Israelis are teaching their kids to be soccer players and celebrities, we're teaching our kids to be tzaddikim. And yes, Israelis, they're Jews, but unfortunately they're not all religious. You see, Rabotai, if you train your kids to admire losers, you've made the decision for them. It has nothing to do with the Jews. It has nothing to do with the Jews. It has nothing to do with the Jewish people. You did it. You as the parent failed them. Listening to Louis Farrakhan and the losers like him that blame it on the Jew because that's their agenda. That's their preach. But the truth is, it has nothing to do with the Jews. How did I have anything to do with your upbringing? How did my rabbi have anything to do with your upbringing? How did I have anything to do with what you decided to watch yesterday, tomorrow, or the next day? No. You decide what to consume. You decide how to use these windows to your soul. You decide what to listen to. You decide what to speak. You decide what to smell. You decide what clothes to wear. You decide whether you're going to be promiscuous or you're going to be modest and preserved. You decide whether you're going to be materialistic or you're going to be much more modest and much more humble. You decide whether you're going to be arrogant and flaunt yourself and build yourself some type of image like Farrakhan's student that thinks that he's a little Farrakhan, making himself all types of images and self-portraits. This shows the product of the teacher. The teacher made himself some big stage for the world to listen to him. His little student does the same exact thing just on the internet, makes himself self-portraits. One of the most pitiful, pathetic excuses for a being, where you literally are constantly making more and more portraits of yourself because you like yourself so much that you're making more pictures of yourself. Truly pathetic existence. But this is the product of society. If you're constantly looking at your phone to take pictures of yourself just to post it on the internet, you are an excuse for a life. You're taking a life that's priceless and you're making it simply worthless. Why? Because you're so consumed with people's opinion of yourself that you have actually become consumed with yourself, which in itself is demented, in itself is something sick. But this is what's happening in society today. people are constantly looking at themselves, constantly taking pictures of themselves, constantly showing up the few things that they have that are better than others. Instead of sharing their wealth, they make fun of everybody that doesn't have wealth. Instead of sharing their blessings, they show off their blessings. Instead of being good, they tell other people to do good. It's literally the opposite of the Torah is what we have as a standard of society today. So it has nothing to do with the Jewish people. It's your decision. And guess what? I'm talking to Jews and non-Jews right now. There are countless Jews that watch my shiurim that are in the same pathetic state of life as the Gentiles. They also aspire to be basketball players, aspire to be movie stars, aspire to be some famous DJ or musician, aspire to be something materialistic, aspire to be some famous this and famous that and rich this and rich that. Literally, aspire to be useless. That's what they aspire to be. Why? Because, again, if your materialistic ambitions are what you think are going to make you a life, you've already decided to give up on life. But if you decide to make your life something with a higher purpose, then whatever you end up using to get to that purpose, consuming to get to that purpose, however many houses you needed, however many cars you needed, however much food you needed, whatever you ended up consuming, whatever you ended up being blessed with, is simply a product of your existence. But if the product became your existence is purposeless.